Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, there are a lot of new and exciting cards from Streets of New Capenna and the New Capenna Precons, and today I'm going to be taking you through what are, in my opinion, with some help from Eddie, the best new cards of Streets of New Capenna for Commander. Now, what does best mean? Well, that's very subjective. I'm definitely taking into account cards I think are going to see a lot of play, cards that are going to make a big impact, whether that's for specific decks or, a certain color. There are a lot of factors to take in, and yeah, your picks might differ from mine, and that's okay. And now with all that said, let's jump into it. So to start things off, I'm going to go through some honorable mentions that might not have made the top 5 for one reason or another. And first up, we've got the brand new Triumphs, or whatever you want to call them, Tricycle lands with Jetmir's Garden, Xander's Lounge, Spar's Headquarters, Yorda's Proving Ground, and Rafine's Tower. Now, the reason that it's, pretty apparent that these are going to see a ton of play is because, they're great, and also we have 5 other cards that are pretty much the exact same but in different colors that see a ton of play already with the Triumphs. So again, with these not being a new unique design, they did not make the top 5 new cards because they're kind of just a rendition of an old card. Regardless, obviously, these cards are still fantastic and many players are going to be very excited about them. I mean, let's just take a look at Zeotora's Proving Ground real quick. It's a swamp mountain forest, so yeah, you can tutor this up with something like a Farseek or a Wood Elves, and it's going to enter the battlefield tapped. It can tap for any of its colors, again, either black, red, or green, and we can cycle it for 3. So not only does it really help us with our mana fixing, like, any of the regular tri-lands, but also, again, we can tutor it up, and on top of that, we can cycle it away if we need to. So definitely a great honorable mention to start us off with. And another honorable mention land cycle that I want to mention really quick are with the new lands with Cabaret Courtyard, Maestro's Theater, Broker's Hideout, Riveteer's Overlook, and Obscura Storefront. These are very simple cards that I can actually see seeing a ton of play. For example, let's read Riveteer's Overlook. It says, when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it. When you do, search your library for a basic swamp, mountain, or forest card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, and you gain 1 life. So in my opinion, this is kind of like an Evolving Wilds specifically made for Commander. Now, unlike Evolving Wilds, this is only getting you 1 of 3 lands, again, either a swamp, mountain, or forest. Again, they have to be a basic, so no getting one of those Triomes, but still, an extra Evolving Wilds, or, a Terramorphic Expanse is never a bad thing, and of course, on top of that, this gains you a life as well. So yeah, I can see these being a slam dunk in a lot of budget decks out there, and yeah, landfall decks as well, and other decks that have synergies with these kind of effects. Next up, real quick, 3 more cards that I do want to highlight that did make the honorable mentions list, but not the top 5, are Seize the Spotlight, Professional Facebreaker, and Benny Brax. Seize the Spotlight is a very spicy card. It says each opponent chooses Fame or Fortune. For each player who chose Fame, gain control of a creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures that gain haste until end of turn. For each player who chose Fortune, you draw a card and create a treasure token. So yeah, this sorcery for just 3 mana can provide you a ton of value. Again, like Mass Mutiny is a 5 mana card, and this can basically do the exact same thing at 3, or again, it can provide you, card advantage and also temporary ramp with treasures. Next up, Professional Facebreaker is a 2/3 human warrior with menace that says whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. And by sacrificing a treasure, exile the top card of your library, may play that card this turn. Yeah, the card that this is reminiscent of is definitely Grim Hireling. Now, Grim Hireling makes 2 treasures instead of 1, but still, this is lower to the ground and can provide you a ton of value throughout the game, and yeah, you can utilize those treasures for temporary card advantage as well. And then Benny Brax I've talked at length about in a lot of other episodes. This is a commander, so yeah, I try to keep commanders for the most part off of the top 5, but regardless, this is going to have a massive impact, especially in mono white. It's a 3/2 druid with Convoke that says at the beginning of each end step, if you create a token this turn, draw a card. Yeah, for many decks out there that are going to be making a lot of tokens, especially those mono white decks that are really struggling with card advantage, this can really help them out. But now that we've gone through the honorable mentions, let's go into the top 5. First up, I want to talk about yet another source of fantastic card advantage in mono white with Rumorgatherer. It's a 2/1 elf wizard that costs 1 white and it says, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. Now, first up, what I really like about this card, and something that I think is important and Wizards needs to keep doing, more so than they have been, is restricting the mana cost for these cards that are supposed to be for mono white. So yeah, I'm happy to see that second pip in there just to make this harder to justify for other decks, though, other decks I'm sure will still utilize it. Regardless, this starts off as card selection and repeatable card selection again. This is scrying 1 no matter what kind of a creature enters the battlefield under your control every single time 1 does. Wizards did not unnecessarily put limits on this card. They didn't say this triggers only once each turn. They didn't say only on your turn. They didn't say non-token. It's any creature, any turn. And of course, you can actually generate card advantage with this instead of just card selection if you get 2 creatures into play in a turn. And yeah, in a deck that is going to be maybe a mono white deck, you probably got a good amount of ways to get creatures into play or make tokens, etc, etc, etc. So yeah, I think this card is going to make a massive impact, especially in decks that need it the most. And yeah, I probably would have been okay if they had thrown in a third pip on this, so it was white, so that it's even harder for other decks to justify, because again, if you're trying to benefit mono white and say we're trying to fix card advantage in that specifically, don't maybe allow the same cards to be utilized elsewhere, like, Smothering Tithe. But soapbox aside, let's move on. Next up, we've got Grand Crescendo, an instant for X white that says create X 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. This card can be fantastic in a lot of situations. First up, a card like Secure the Waste sees a lot of play already, and that card just costs 1 pip less. Now, yes, that does make a difference, but that is just making creatures, not giving your creatures indestructible. So, like that card, though, this can be a fantastic way to flood the board with a ton of tokens out of nowhere, maybe right before your turn if you really want to, or obviously you can also utilize this as a way to make tokens and a way to protect your team, or just as a way to protect your team for just 2 mana. Again, you are not required to put any mana into that X, so let's say you've got 2 mana up and someone's trying to wipe the board, well, you can save your entire team for just 2 mana. Again, there are a lot of scenarios where this card can be incredibly impactful, and yeah, again, there aren't really too many 2-mana protection spells that protect your entire team. I mean, some somewhat similar ones are Boros Charm, which costs just 2 mana as well. It's a little more flexible, it has different modes, and also it protects all your permanents, and then Heroic Intervention also protects all your permanents and also gives them hexproof. But yeah, again, there's a very short list of 2-mana board wipe protection spells. The vast majority costs 3, and yeah, although it is just 1 extra mana, that is a lot more to have to hold up when you're trying to protect your team from a board wipe. I can see this card making a massive impact in a good amount of decks out there, and yeah, again, either board wipe protection or, a way to make a ton of tokens, or both. Yeah, this card is just fantastic. But moving on, now let's talk about Bootleggers Stash, an artifact for 5 and a green that says, lands you control have tap create a treasure token. Now, agree or disagree that green should be getting this type of effect, that's kind of beside the point at this point because the card has been printed, which might be unfortunate. Regardless, this is a card that Eddie and I have discussed, and yes, this is probably a card that might be overplayed in certain decks that don't really need it. That being said, it can still make a massive impact when things go right with those decks, and for the decks that really do want this card is incredible. First up, just at face value, with this in play with no other effects, this is just basically all of your lands tap for whatever mana you want. And on top of that, you can just perfectly store up your mana as well, kind of like a Crufix effect, but again, instead of it being, turned into colorless, it's, 1 mana of any color and whenever you want again, because it's just a treasure sitting on the field. And again, where this really can make a massive impact is with decks that can really utilize those treasures and take more advantage of them. So maybe a deck cares about, you sacrificing artifacts or permanents or whatnot, you can get extra value out of that. I mean, Corvold comes to mind as just absolutely loving this card and drawing cards and getting even bigger whenever you just basically now tap your lands. Or again, maybe you've got a deck that revolves fully around treasures and you've got things like Zorn, which can give you even more treasures whenever you make one, or, Academy Manufacturer, which gives you other tokens as well, or, Goldspan Dragon, which can just, double up the value of your treasures. So yeah, again, just at face value, this can just actually make a massive impact already, letting you store up, your mana perfectly, essentially. And then, of course, for decks that really want to utilize this, well, things can get really absurd really quickly. Obviously, this does have a pretty high converted mana cost, but still, you're in green. You can get there. Next up, though, yet another white card, and yeah, it seemed like Wizards is trying to finally help out white, though, again, in my opinion, need more pips, because it needs to be more focused on mono white, just not all colors. Anyways, off the soapbox again, Smuggler Share. It's an achievement for a 2 and a white that says, at the beginning of each end step, draw a card for each opponent who drew 2 or more cards this turn, then create a treasure token for each opponent who had 2 or more lands enter the battlefield under their control this turn. Now, this again is just going to be a card that you can just slam down in the vast majority of circumstances. This is probably going to provide you a lot of value throughout the game if it just stays in play. Obviously, this can be especially impactful for a color that really struggles with, card advantage and also with ramp. So yes, mono white decks are going to pretty much want this card across the board, and it's going to be very hard to argue against it, outside of price. That being said, also, if you've got a deck that can force opponents to draw more than one card in a turn, maybe like a wheel deck, well, you can get a lot of additional value out of that. On the other hand, there aren't too many decks out there that force players to play extra lands, but yeah, obviously, if that's the case, sure, you're getting additional value from there too, but more likely, again, you're just benefiting off of green players ramping, or again, just any player playing in Evolving Wilds or whatnot. Regardless, yeah, I think this card is going to see a ton of play. Its price is going to be quite high, and yeah, we're going to have to see just the kind of impact that is going to make on Commander. Only time will truly tell. And finally, we've gotten to the Godfather reference.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Okay, terrible Marlon Brando Godfather impression aside, an offer you can't refuse is an instant for a blue that says counter target non-creature spell, its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. This card is simply incredible. Negate sees an absurd amount of play in Commander. It can counter any target non-creature spell for just 1 mana more. But again, a 1 mana spell versus a 2 mana spell, especially when it's a counter spell, is a huge difference. I mean, maybe a more apt comparison to this, though, is Swan Song, which is an incredible card in Commander, and yeah, already commands a really high price tag. And that is an instant for a blue that can counter an enchantment, instant, or sorcery spell, but it gives that player a 2/2 flyer. So, Swan Song cannot hit 2 things that this can. Again, this is any non-creature spell, which again counts artifacts and also planeswalkers. So obviously this can hit more things and yeah, cost the exact same amount. Now obviously, like Swan Song, there is a downside to it. Whereas Swan Song is giving that player a 2/2 flyer, this is giving that player 2 treasures. And in a format like Commander, I would much rather give a player a 2/2 flyer than 2 treasures, but again, that being said, there are trade-offs. Again, this can hit more things than Swan Song can. This card is going to see an absurd amount of play, and yeah, even for an uncommon, this is going to get pretty expensive. And yeah, now if that blue player has 1 mana up, you've got one more thing to worry about, not just Swan Song now, but also an offer you can't refuse. And of course, with this card now existing and its name, it's going to lead to a lot of bad Godfather impressions in games of Commander, so prepare yourself for that. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and again, a big thanks to Eddie for all the great discussions, and yeah, now it's my turn to hear from you, so in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on these picks are. Let me know what you did like, let me know what you didn't like, and let me know what picks you would have made instead. And of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one.